My name is Ethan, and I've always considered myself a lucky man. Not lottery lucky, but life lucky. I was fortunate enough to find a job I love, live in a city I adore, and most importantly, marry a woman who I believed was my soulmate, Lydia. We had been together for 10 years, married for 7. 10 years filled with inside jokes, cozy evenings, and future plans that felt so real, so attainable. I thought our marriage was unshakable, solid as an old oak tree. I believed it with all my heart, until that night. I was on a business trip in Chicago. A 5-day marathon of meetings and presentations. Tiring but necessary work. I wasn't scheduled to return until tomorrow evening, but things went better than expected. I wrapped everything up by the middle of Thursday. The plan was to fly home Friday morning, but when I called Lydia to tell her, she sounded distant. "That's great, honey, but I wouldn't rush back. I have plans for tomorrow night," she said, and her voice lacked the usual excitement and instead carried a noticeable tension. I stiffened. "What kind of plans, Lydia?" "I'm coming home." "Girls' night, Ethan. Just the girls. You don't want to ruin it, do you?" "Ruin it?" That was odd. Lydia never minded me coming home early. On the contrary, she always said she counted the minutes. That tension, that sudden haste, it set off alarm bells. She was lying. I didn't know how I knew, but the feeling in my gut was a heavy, cold weight. I told her I'd take the next available flight home, and her immediate protest only solidified my suspicion. "Don't do that, Ethan, please. I want our time to be special, and I'll be tired after this evening. Let's stick to Saturday as planned." "All right, Lydia," I said, feigning agreement. "Whatever you say. I'll be home Saturday morning." But I didn't listen. I booked a flight that was leaving in 2 hours. I was scheduled to be home by 9:30 p.m. My best friend was Mark. We'd known each other since kindergarten. He was supposed to be the godfather of my children, if we ever had them, and my best man at the wedding. He was family. He often stopped by to help Lydia when I was away, fixing something, lifting something heavy, or just keeping her company. I trusted him as much as I trusted myself. When the taxi dropped me off at our house, it was dark and quiet. I paid the driver, grabbed my suitcase, and quietly walked up the porch. I took out my keys, but noticed the light in our bedroom was on. That was strange. Lydia always slept with the lights off when I wasn't there. I unlocked the door, trying to be as silent as possible. I wanted to surprise her. I stepped into the hallway. Even with my suitcase in hand, I could sense that something was wrong. In the entryway, near the living room, lay a pair of men's shoes. They weren't mine. They were Mark's. A cold surge of adrenaline shot through me. I felt my face go pale. No, it couldn't be what I thought. Maybe he just stopped by to fix something and hadn't left. But why were his shoes here? I dropped my suitcase by the stairs and walked up to the second floor. My heart was pounding like a jackhammer, and the rushing sound of blood in my ears drowned out every other noise. I moved as if in a dream, so slowly it felt unreal. Our bedroom door was ajar, but not locked. I paused. From inside, I heard a soft laugh. A woman's laugh. Lydia's laugh. And a man's voice that I knew better than my own. I don't remember doing it, but my hand instinctively reached for the doorknob. I threw the door open. The scene that greeted me seared my vision. They weren't in bed. They were sitting on the edge of our bed, only in bathrobes. Lydia was leaning against him, her head on his shoulder, and he was holding her. But it wasn't just a friendly gesture. The way she held his hand, the way he looked at her, it was a look filled with an intimacy I hadn't seen in her eyes, directed at me for years. They both snapped their heads toward me, like startled animals caught in a trap. Their faces, especially Mark's, were a picture of pure, undiluted terror. "Ethan!" Lydia gasped, clutching the robe tighter across her chest. "Surprise," I managed to say, and my voice was like sand, dry and raspy. It was the only word I could choke out. All my courage, my 10 years of belief, my certainty, it all collapsed like a house of cards, leaving me hollow inside. I stood, blocking the exit, and felt the ground giving way beneath my feet. All the sounds of the world suddenly fell silent. There was only an icy hush, broken only by my ragged breath. Mark was the first to stand up. His face, usually rosy and friendly, was deathly pale, and moisture beaded on his forehead. He started fumbling, trying to find words that didn't exist. His voice cracked. He nervously reached for the chair where his jeans lay. "Don't you dare. Don't even think about getting dressed." My voice emerged again, but this time it wasn't just raspy, it had a steely firmness I didn't know I possessed. I felt a surge of rage boiling inside me, yet, at the same time, a strange, unbearable desire to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. My best friend. My wife. "Ethan, please." Lydia finally found her voice. She quickly got out of bed, wrapping her robe tighter around her chest. Her eyes were filled with tears, but not tears of remorse, but tears of shame and, it seemed to me, annoyance at being caught. "Please, what?" I took a step forward. "Please explain to me what kind of girls' night this is, where you're lying on my bed in my house, in the arms of my, damn it, best friend?" Mark tried to intervene. "This is my fault, Ethan. Completely mine." Lydia was just. I cut him off sharply, turning my gaze to him. His words were the final nail in the coffin of our friendship. "Quiet. I'm not talking to you. You're garbage. You're a traitor. You swore loyalty to me, Mark. At our wedding. You're the godfather of non-existent children. Get out. Right now." His hands trembled as he pulled on his jeans. He didn't even look me in the eye, didn't utter a single word of justification or apology. He just threw me a frightened glance, grabbed his shirt, and fled the room. I heard him quickly descending the stairs and slamming the front door, taking only his shame and my broken heart with him. Now we were alone. My wife and I. The woman who was the meaning of my life. I gently closed the bedroom door. It was the only quiet, measured movement of the entire evening. I walked over to the window and looked out into the darkness. Mark's car was gone. How long? That was my first question to Lydia. I didn't even turn to face her. I needed to look at the dark sky so I wouldn't see her face, so I wouldn't lose control. "It's been a few times. The last 2 months." Her voice was barely audible, as if she were speaking from another room. "A few times," I repeated, slowly turning around. "You mean that for the past 2 months, when I left for a business trip, you called my best friend here to this?" Lydia cried for real now, covering her face with her hands. "It's not what you think. We didn't plan it. It just happened. You were constantly on business trips, Ethan. I was lonely. Mark came over, helped out, we talked, and one evening we just drank too much wine and..." I stopped her by raising my hand. I couldn't listen to that trite age-old excuse. I was lonely. Lonely? You had a phone, Lydia. You had me. I called you every night. You could have told me you felt lonely. You could have gone to your parents. You could have gone to your girlfriends. But you chose him. My friend. How could you look me in the eye when I returned from the last business trip? How could you let him come to our family dinner last Sunday? She took her hands away from her face. Her makeup was smeared, and she looked utterly broken. You're always working. You're constantly on the road. I'm tired of taking second place to your career, Ethan. Mark, he listened. He was here. He was attentive. That was a low blow. She was shifting the blame onto me, onto my job, which, by the way, paid for our big house and her fancy car. I worked for us, Lydia. I was building our future. And you were destroying it while I was away. You say I was inattentive? What were you doing? There came a moment when all the energy drained out of my rage, leaving only exhaustion. I sat down on the edge of the armchair where Mark had been sitting just minutes before, and just stared at her. I'm going back to my trip tomorrow. I'm going to finish it. But when I come back, you won't be here. I spoke calmly, monotonously, as if reading from a letter. I don't want yelling. I don't want drama. I don't want discussions. I don't want to hear why you were lonely anymore. Take your things, take off your ring, and leave me the keys. She looked at me, and in her eyes was the realization that this was the end. Not just a fight, but an irreversible end to their 10 years together. You can't do this, Ethan. We're married. We can talk, we can save this. I stood up. Save what, Lydia? The fact that you were lying on our bed with my friend? You think that can be saved? You destroyed the foundation of our life. It no longer exists. I need a break, clean and fast. I leave tomorrow. You have 2 days. On Saturday, I'll return, and if you're here, I'm calling the police to remove you. This is my house. She started to cry again, but I no longer felt pity for her. Only emptiness. I turned and walked out of the bedroom without looking back. I picked up my suitcase from the stairs and went to the guest room, where I lay down, fully dressed. That night was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how 10 years of shared life could turn into nothing in less than 10 minutes. I lost my wife and my friend in one evening, and I knew the worst was yet to come. The calls, the divorce, the division of assets. But the hardest part would be regaining trust in people. I woke up to the sound of my alarm. 5 in the morning. The night spent on the guest room sofa was as cold and uncomfortable as the emotional state I was in. I hadn't slept, but merely existed in a state of semi-consciousness, replaying that scene over and over in my head, like a damaged film reel. I took a quick shower, the hottest I could stand, trying to wash away the feeling of grime that had settled on my skin. When I emerged, I saw my reflection, a tired man with bloodshot eyes, who had aged 10 years in one night. Then I remembered the wedding ring. I automatically lifted my left hand. The thin gold band I had worn every day for 7 years now felt heavy and fake. I slowly pulled it off my finger. The skin beneath was lighter, an unhealed patch of skin, a symbol of a vow that had just been shattered. I placed the ring on the dresser next to my watch. It was the last physical link to Lydia. When I left the room, I found Lydia. She was standing near the kitchen entrance, holding a mug. She must not have slept, or had woken early to intercept me. Her eyes were red again, but this time there was no hysteria, only a quiet, doomed plea. "Ethan, please, can we talk before you leave?" I made coffee. I shook my head. "No need, Lydia. I told you everything. You have time to pack. I don't want any more talk. It won't change anything." I walked past her, went into the kitchen, picked up the travel bag I had left on the counter, and headed for the front door. I didn't even look toward the living room where Mark's shoes had been. The shoes were gone, as was our friendship. Lydia followed me to the door. "But what will you tell work? Why did you come back and immediately leave again? Ethan, you can't just run away from the problem." "I'm not running away, Lydia. I'm finishing what I had to finish. And then I'll come back and start a new life." I opened the door. "What will I tell work? I'll tell them my house burned down. That my best friend and wife destroyed it in one evening. And that won't be a lie." That was the last thing I said to her. I walked out without waiting for a reply and got into the pre-booked taxi. The ride to the airport was long and silent. I looked out the window at the city that had once seemed like our sanctuary, but was now a battlefield. Every street, every corner reminded me of her. On the plane, I felt alone again. Loneliness in an empty apartment is one thing. Loneliness among 300 strangers, knowing your best friend and wife betrayed you, is something else entirely. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos. Our wedding photo. Lydia in her white dress, bathed in sunlight. Me, smiling and proud. And Mark, standing over my shoulder, genuinely, it seemed, happy for us. Wedding flashback. I was 25. I was terrified and excited at the same time. Mark stood next to me, adjusting my tie. "Don't panic, man," he said, smiling. "She's yours forever. You guys are the best couple I know. You're a lucky guy, Ethan." I remember shaking his hand, tight, like a brother's. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mark," I replied. He had brought her champagne when she was nervous, and he distracted the guests while we finished the photo shoot. He was our protector, our support. I sighed. That memory was now poison. Every friendly action of his was now just a clever maneuver to get closer to my wife. He was watching. He was waiting. My fingers unconsciously dialed his number. I hesitated. What would I say? Scream? Swift? No, that wouldn't give me satisfaction. I needed an answer. But I pressed call. Ringing. Long, unbearable ringing. Then he picked up. "Hello, Mark." His voice was quiet, worn out. "Quiet. I'm not going to yell. Just listen," I began, my words sharp like honed blades. "How could you? You are my brother. We were family. What would you say to your wife if she did this to you and your best friend?" There was a long silence on the line. I could hear his heavy breathing. "Ethan, I'm not making excuses. I know it was awful. I know what I did. I can't explain it to you. It was a moment of weakness. It had nothing to do with you, only with my own issues." "Issues?" I laughed bitterly. It wasn't a laugh, just a choked sound. "Your issues have now destroyed my life. This isn't a moment of weakness, Mark. You came to my house while I was away, while I trusted you more than anyone in the world. You knew what you were doing. You planned this." "No. I swear I didn't," he almost screamed. "When you left this time, we just talked and she started crying. She said she missed you. And we just hugged. And that was it. We didn't plan." "Hugged?" My voice turned cold again. "Do you know how I found you? Do you think hugs explain why you were in my bed, in robes, with looks of pure terror on your faces? Don't lie to me anymore, Mark. At least have the courage to admit that you exploited my trust to sleep with my wife." He fell silent again. "You're right," he finally said. "I don't deserve your forgiveness or an explanation. I don't know what happened. But I will respect your decision. Our business partner is already aware. I'm leaving. I won't bother you anymore. Ever." I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't an excuse, but at least it was an admission. "Good. Let's leave it at that," I said and hung up. Looking at the phone screen, I realized that our 20-year bond was severed. The friendship didn't end with a fight, but with an act of betrayal that was worse than death. He died to me. The 2 days back in Chicago were hell on earth. I attended meetings, smiled, signed contracts, but inside I felt like a robot executing pre-programmed actions. I was professional. I finished the trip, but every time my professional focus slipped, the pain returned. I drove up to the house on Saturday afternoon. Lydia's car was gone. That was the first moment of relief in 3 days. She had complied. I opened the door. The house was shrouded in a dead silence. Everything was in its place: the sofa, the table, the paintings on the walls. But the house was empty. Not just of her belongings, but of her presence, of the invisible energy that made it a home. I went upstairs and into the bedroom. Her side of the closet was empty. Her cosmetics were gone from the bathroom. Even her favorite nightstand was cleared. She had taken everything that belonged to her. On the dresser, next to my wedding ring, lay a small piece of paper and the house keys. It was a short, handwritten note. "Ethan, I know you don't want to talk to me anymore. You have every right. I only took my personal belongings and my car. I will not claim the house or anything else. I have signed the documents and left them with the lawyer, Connor, you know him. I apologize. Not for being lonely, but for destroying your trust and with it, your world. I hope you find peace someday. Lydia." No tears, no hysterics, no excuses. Just a dry, final admission of defeat. This was our end. Not epic, but quiet and bitter. I took the keys and tore the note into small pieces. The following weeks were difficult. Paperwork. The divorce went cleanly and quickly, just as I had wanted. Lydia truly offered no resistance, realizing she had lost everything. I officially became a divorced man. I realized I hadn't just lost a wife and a friend, I had lost a part of my identity. I was Lydia's husband, Mark's friend. Now I was just Ethan. It took time to learn to be just Ethan again. I changed the door locks, repainted the bedroom, and took down all the photographs. I converted the guest room into my new home office. I started running every morning, listening to new podcasts, and relearned how to cook dinner for just one person. A month passed. I was sitting on our back porch, in the same spot where Lydia and I used to plan our summer vacations. I held a cold coffee and watched the sunset. It was the first evening I didn't feel rage, only a dull ache. An ache for who I used to be, not for who she was. The betrayal shattered my world, but it also gave me a chance for a genuine, unadulterated fresh start. I was not a victim, I was a survivor. I will never trust unconditionally again, but I will be stronger. And I knew that one day, when I was ready, I would meet someone who deserved the trust of Ethan, the man who survived the fire and rebuilt his home.